let's go over to their, I feel like everyone's rivals, but I feel like these two especially, they're bitter rivals, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers. They did not make the playoffs last year, but they did extend Mike Tomlin's above 500 streak. They went 9-8. They're kind of a surprise team in terms of just how their record was, because I think we expected them to be much worse. But nonetheless, they made it work, and they did lose some pieces, starting with mainly on defense. A couple of cornerbacks in Cameron Sutton and William Jackson, and then a couple of linebackers in Miles Jack and Devin Bush, and then also safety Terrell Edmonds. And in terms of additions, grabbed guard Isaac Somalo from the Eagles, so solid guard there, and guard Nate Herbig as well, and then edge rusher Marcus Golden from the Cardinals, and then linebacker Landon Roberts. And then they also added cornerback Patrick Peterson from the Vikings and safety kind of / linebacker, because he's played at some places, so maybe that's where they're putting him here, is Keanu Neal as well via free agency. And then draft-wise, round 1, they went offensive tackle Broderick Jones out of Georgia, which was a bit of a surprise because we all felt that they would get the guy that they got in round 2 or round 1, and that was cornerback Joey Porter Jr. out of Penn State. They got him at pick 32, so good value for them there. And then later in the second round, grabbed defensive tackle Keanu Benton out of Washington. And then later in the draft, they grabbed draft combine darling, and he could very well be a stud, and tight end Darnell Washington out of Georgia. So, John, what were your thoughts on the Steelers offseason? And do you think it'll be enough to keep them in contention like they were last year?
I mean, the tough part about the Steelers, man, is that every time that we've ever doubted them, like the last 2 years where we thought this is the year they're going to fall off, like they're going to win 6 games, they're going to win 5 games, whatever it is, the streak's going to end. They just keep doing it. So I don't know how to feel about the Steelers. Like, I like some of the offseason moves they made. That said, on paper, the team still has some question marks for me, right? Like, you know, the secondary, for example, we start there. The secondary last year was like, and you know, you have Minkah Fitzpatrick, who obviously is a stud, and luckily last year, because of the health of the linebackers, he was actually to like get back to his just full style and role playing safety, as opposed to like the year before he was kind of more in the box because of the injuries to linebackers. And you know, he was fantastic. But then outside of that, it's like Joey Porter Jr. is a corner. And I just talked about that like for corners, sometimes it takes a little bit for you to really like get a firm grasp of the league. I feel like some people maybe don't really like remember that, because you know, the example I always go to is Jalen Ramsey, right? Like his first season, he allowed like 800 yards, like, and he's a stud. Like, you know, there was a long time where everybody considered him the consensus best cornerback in the league, like no debate. It was Jalen Ramsey, and then who's number 2? But it took 2 or 3 years for him to really get to that point. I mean, I think it was like his 3rd year was when the Jaguars really started to pop off, and then him and why am I blanking on the corner who was opposite him?
AJ Bouye.
Yeah, AJ Bouye, yeah. When they were like the 2 top corners, like the best corner duo in the NFL that one year. So, but it took a little bit. So it could be the same case for Joey Porter. Patrick Peterson's a veteran, obviously, but he's certainly past his prime. He hasn't necessarily been a lockdown corner in quite some time, and he's going to be relied on as a starter there. DeMonte Casey and Keanu Neal, like these are 2 former Cowboys. I'm very, familiar with them. At least as of right now, Keanu Neal is listed as a safety. I don't know if he'll actually stick there, but that's what he's listed as of right now. I would be interested to see if they put Keanu Neal at linebacker, just because, they did lose a couple linebackers, being Jack and Bush, and so I think that, he could be interesting. But at the same time, I don't know. There's just a lot of question marks in the secondary outside of Fitzpatrick, which I think that he can overcome a lot of things. And then obviously with the defensive line of Hayward, TJ Watt, you can also overcome a lot of things. But we'll see, because overall the defense was largely average last year. I think they were like the 16th ranked defense on the season, which, credit to them. TJ Watt did miss time. I can't remember if there was anybody else notable in the defense that missed time. But point being, they were not the healthiest they could have been. And then same for the offense. I don't know. Once again, also average last year. I like the addition of Broderick Jones, because everybody's biggest concern with the Steelers for the last, ever since David Castro, or was it David DeCastro, whenever he retired.
Yeah, David DeCastro.
Yeah, ever since he retired, the big concern has been the offensive line because he left and then a few other pieces left. And, now here we are. And I think they have some decent pieces, like James Daniels, and you add Roger Jones at left tackle. So they have some pieces to build around. So we'll see if the offensive line can make it work. Because other than that, the offense has a lot of talent. Pat Freiermuth, George Pickens, Deontay Johnson. You got Calvin Austin, who they drafted, what was it, last year? Then you got Darnell Washington, who they drafted this year, who's apparently been having a really strong training camp. We'll see if Najee Harris can get back to his previous form. So they have a lot of talent. It's just, can Kenny Pickett take the next step forward? Can the offensive line improve? And can the team in general take advantage of the talent they do have?
Yeah, I'm with you. I like the offense of potential, but obviously I think, like you mentioned, line is the biggest thing. I love that they actually did grab offensive line first round. I didn't expect them to, and I think many Steelers fans felt the same way. I know a couple of the ones that I talked to definitely did not expect them to go line first round, just because it seems like recent years, even though it's been need number one, they just haven't pulled the trigger. So hopefully that just means they're more confident in Broderick Jones. But nonetheless, yeah. Another concern though defensively could be obviously linebacker and corner, because the Miles Jack, Devin Bushes, they like that type of linebacker, the athletic guys to cover a lot of ground. We'll see if Keanu Neal, like I said, if they put him in that spot. Same with Landon Roberts, but Pittsburgh does do a lot of complicated and complex kind of crazy blitzes. Sometimes leaves their cornerbacks or even their linebackers in kind of no man's land or really tough spots. So we'll see early on if there's miscommunications or breakdowns or things like that. And then Alex Hyde, I think Highsmith, the other edge rusher. Be interesting to see if he had a solid year last year. Can he be a consistent guy opposite of TJ? And Cam Hayward's always really solid, but you never know. When I'm not saying he will. I'm absolutely not. I'm knocking on wood, but you just never know in terms of age when guys drop off. So always a concern. Depth is basically what I'm trying to allude to for the Steelers, because like you mentioned, TJ's been dealing with injuries the past couple of years, and you never know with some of these other guys. So I don't expect Pittsburgh to be a playoff team, but
that's what we said last year.
I was about to say I am not going to say I expect them to be one of the worst teams, because they've, like you said, they've proven us wrong every time. Yeah. So I expect this team to be a feisty team, but I hope for Tomlin's sake that they somehow weasel their way to 9-8 again and and just keep defying the odds and keep that streak alive. But in a way, I'm like, I don't know how Steelers fans feel. I'm sure there's some that are like, hey, let's just lean to the rebuild and just have one losing season while everyone, while the AFC is going ham. But I mean, you never know with this team. And but yeah, I am very curious to see year 2 of George Pickens. Now that Kenny Pickett is the guy too, you mentioned him. Can he take the next steps? And then maybe can Deontay Johnson be a consistent one? Maybe have a tandem there. And I'm interested to see Calvin Austin too, because like you said, they drafted him last year. He missed all of last year, the foot injury, and I know it's one preseason game, but he really popped obviously in that preseason game. And Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh's one of those teams where they draft a wide receiver even late. I got my eye on them because Pittsburgh usually has a good eye for wide receiver and developing them. They're just one of those teams. Like some teams have certain positions where they're just really darn good at that. So, I'm I'm excited for the prospect of Pittsburgh and what they're building. But I don't expect it all to come together this year. But once again, watch me eat my words come January, where they're like leading the division somehow, some way. But I highly doubt it.
Kenny Pickett becomes a superstar or something.
Yeah, that's I mean, not that I don't want that for Kenny. It's just
it's unlikely.
It is on the bottom of likely scenarios that run in my head that were likely to happen. I think that would be true for any NFL just person that follows the NFL. So we'll see what the Steelers do this year, if they can stay in contention.